What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Film Room. If you're watching this video, there's a chance that you already watched my video called How to Watch Basketball, where I broke down a college basketball game and talked about the nuances and things to pay attention to when it comes to watching the game of basketball at that level. So I decided, after seeing some comments, to do the same video with the NBA, especially with the playoffs just starting, because there are some things specific to the NBA that dictate the way that they play, and if you don't understand these things, it's easy to have more critique than you do appreciation. So in this video, we're going to go possession by possession through the first quarter, and I'm going to teach you how to watch the NBA. So first and foremost, the most important thing about the NBA is the shot clock. They play with a 24-second shot clock, which is the fastest in the world, and it dictates the way that they play. It forces them to try and create advantages as soon as they cross half court, which is one of the main critiques with the NBA. That's a lot of isolation and early shots. But after two dribble handoffs and a drive to the paint, the offense has already used up half of their shot clock, which doesn't allow them much time to do anything else. Another main factor in the NBA game that is different than anything else in the world is they have a defensive 3-second rule. And this means that every defensive player, unless they are within an arm's length of their matchup, is not allowed to be in the paint for 3 seconds consecutively, or it's a violation, just like an offensive 3 seconds. And this rule makes it very easy for offensive players to get to the paint without a lot of resistance, because there's not players camped in there ready to rotate. So the style of this game is in a league of its own. And what you're going to notice when you watch a lot of NBA games is that off of their first trigger or the first action that they run, it's typically going to lead to a shot, because they would rather get into a two-man game like they have right here and try and shoot it immediately than get into a late clock situation where they don't get a good shot at all. So you have to set your expectations accordingly. If you want a slow, methodical game with a bunch of actions and sets that you can learn from, this is not the game that you should watch to do that. But there are a lot of amazing things that you can learn, and I'm going to start with style of play. Hunting mismatches is a major theme in the NBA because these are some of the most skilled players in the world, and so they will play through somebody who is just better than their matchup because it creates advantages. The other thing that you will see is ball screens being set early and often. The reason for this is that ball screen coverage is easy to manipulate, and it can create open shots very early in the possession. And the other main thing that you need to expect is that there are going to be a lot of catch and shoot threes that are taken in the NBA game, and I'll explain the reason for the high volume of these shots later in the video. Now, throughout the history of the NBA, there's always been waves of different strategies or philosophies offensively, and the wave right now that's going on is Princeton concepts. So you'll see almost every NBA team running some variation of giving the ball to the 5-man at the top of the key, and then doing one of three things: either setting down screens for a guy to come off of a dribble handoff, cutting from the wing or the slot area and then filling in behind so you can play two-man game on that side if the cut's not open, or doing what's referred to as either a chase or a get, where the guy who passed the ball to the 5 chases after his own pass and goes and gets it from the 5-man to try and gain an advantage that way. So as you watch this game and other NBA games, expect to see either early isolations, early ball screens, or some sort of a 3-man action or a Princeton look to try and create an advantage to get a shot early in the clock. Now I'd like to give some context to the one-on-one or isolations that we see that some of you might like and some of you might hate. When Cooper Flagg catches this ball, there's only 10 seconds left on the shot clock, and the guys who stand in the deep corners are typically knockdown three-point shooters, so there's not going to be a lot of help from this man, and because of the defensive 3-second rule, you can't get a lot of help from the low man who's in the hole, and so these isolation situations honestly just make sense. And this is part of the reason why they set so many early ball screens, because if the 5-man sets a ball screen on the point guard and they switch, theoretically you've just created two mismatches in the first few seconds of the possession that you can take advantage of. And if they hedge to avoid switching, well, now they've put two people on the ball, and so somebody is open somewhere else on the court, and if they can get the ball to that player, they're playing 4-on-3. Now, this stuff doesn't always work perfectly, and they don't always execute, but the strategy of every NBA team is how quickly can we get a mismatch that we like or get 2 people on the ball. Because at every level of basketball, the strategy is pretty much the same. The goal should be to try and get to this position right here. The ball handler gets an advantage on his matchup attacking the basket to try and get a layup, and then if any one of the 4 other defenders help, you pass it to their matchup. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier with all of the catch and shoot threes that we see in the NBA. These early drag ball screens often result in guys getting early paint touches. And once they get to the paint, they have 2 choices. They can either shoot it or they can kick it out. So NBA coaches have groomed their players to be able to knock down catch and shoot threes, because if you can just make 1 out of every 3, that's the same as being a 50% shooter from 2, which is exceptional. And that's why the majority of actions that you see in the NBA are going to be these 3-man concepts, or you're going to see a lot of 2-man game where they're just trying to create that initial advantage with the 2 or 3 players involved while everybody else is on the perimeter ready to catch and shoot. Now, as far as real plays go, you will occasionally see in the flow of the game a player call something where they get into an action that's more than just an early ball screen, like you see right here. So Christian Braun's going to call something that gets them into this 3-man game, which is often known as horns, with 2 guys in the corner. They're going to throw the ball to Jokic, and the whole point of this play is to try and either get Murray a catch-and-shoot 3 off of this flare, and if the defense isn't on the same page about how to guard it, Christian can slip to the basket right here. But when neither one of these things are open, guess what the offense is going to do? They're going to get right back into a ball screen or a handoff and play out of that advantage. So when you're able to watch the NBA through this lens, what you're going to notice is a lot of similar patterns. When the Mavericks come down and try and get into this early ball screen with Cooper Flagg and he gets rid of it, it kind of disjoints their offense. So Powell sprints up here to the elbow, calls for the ball, and then Cooper Flagg immediately sprints off of him, and this isn't a set play. These are just concepts and triggers that they practice and work on so that when their offense gets stagnant, they have things to go to. Because if you remember, those same 2 players got into that same organic action the 2nd or 3rd possession of the game. So there are certain things that you're not going to learn by watching the NBA game, but there are a lot of concepts that you can pick up and ways that you can understand the game by watching the way that they play. And one thing that you'll notice is that they rarely turn down opportunities to get out in transition because, again, with a short clock, trying to gain an advantage is difficult. So if they can get an early paint touch and a shot at the rim before the defense gets set up, more times than not, they're going to take it. Now, some of you might be wondering, what do the head coaches do if this game is moving so fast and all they really do is get into early ball screens or play out of mismatches? Well, a lot of the coaching at this level is going into the game prepared with a game plan to maximize the advantages that your team possesses and to try and minimize the advantages of the opponent. Now, where you can see a lot of the X's and O's from coaches is coming out of timeouts like we see right here, because they have an opportunity to draw something up that the defense hasn't seen. And what I love from Denver on this possession is that they actually came out of the timeout in a 2-3 zone, knowing that Dallas probably drew something up for a man-to-man. So this zone screwed up their play and they don't have enough time to get into something else, and they ended up settling for a bad shot. So there is a ton of strategy that goes into this game, but most of it is going to revolve around isolations, ball screens, and 3-man actions, which are typically Princeton concepts. And the last thing that I'll say about the volume of threes that are being shot in the NBA is this. In the 1980s, scoring was around 110 points a game, and then by the early 2000s, it had dropped down to 97 points per game, and in today's NBA, it is up over 114 points, which is the highest in the history of basketball. And that is in large part a result of the shooting ability of not just superstars, but of every player that's on the court in today's NBA. Hopefully you're able to view this game with fresh eyes, or at least something new to look for. Thanks for coming through. We'll see you next time in the film room.